What makes a political leader so revered that his supporters literally see him as a god? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into source material that examines the public image of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We'll explore how what some call a cult of personality is built and how it's maintained.
He is our God. We worship him. Just take that in for a second. Those are the words of Mangal Vajpayee, a political worker and an incredibly devoted supporter of the Prime Minister. Now that single statement gets right to the heart of a fascinating paradox that our source material dives into. What kind of devotion leads a person to see a political leader as a divine figure?
And here's the twist. According to the source, despite this profound political faith, Vajpayee's own living conditions are, well, they're extremely tough. We're talking no electricity, no toilet, not even a sewer connection. And that contrast really sets up the fundamental question of this whole analysis. What drives this incredible level of support, even when someone's personal circumstances don't seem to be getting any better?
So, to try and make sense of all this, the source material brings up a pretty heavy concept, a cult of personality. So what does that term actually mean? And what are the mechanisms that are allegedly used to build one?
Okay, so here's the key thing to understand. A cult of personality isn't just about being popular. No, it's an active, deliberate process. It's about using mass media, propaganda, you name it, to build up this almost superhuman image of a leader, an image that inspires not just support, but actual worshipful devotion.
The source we're looking at proposes this really interesting four-part framework. It calls the 4 departments of brainwashing. First, you build pride. Then, you create a sense of historical victimization. After that, you instill fear. And for this explainer, we're really going to zero in on that 4th and final step, the creation of a messiah figure. You know, the one leader who can save everyone.
All right, so how do you build a messiah image? Well, according to our source, the first pillar is an origin story that has become famous all over the world, the story of the humble chaiwala, or tea seller.
And this is a direct quote from the Prime Minister himself. It's a narrative that has been absolutely central to his political identity. And you can see why, right? The story of a boy from an extremely poor family who rises up to the highest office in the entire country, it's powerful. But the source material we're analyzing starts to ask some questions about the details.
So here, the analysis really puts the official claims side by side with some conflicting accounts. It cites Modi's own biographer, who apparently calls the poverty claims grossly exaggerated. It even points to childhood photos of him wearing a suit. The source also quotes his brother, who clarifies that he was the son of a tea seller who would help out at his dad's canteen, not a full-time tea seller himself.
And this is where the analysis points to what it sees as a pretty big contradiction. Despite the whole poor family brand, it highlights times when poverty was allegedly hidden away from international cameras. It talks about a 1,600-foot wall built to hide slums during the Namaste Trump event, and green screens used for the same reason during the G20 summit. And this is all happening against a backdrop where income inequality is reportedly at a 100-year high.
Okay, so moving on from that humble beginning story, the source then looks at a second really key aspect of this public persona, the image of an ascetic, a fakir or holy beggar who has supposedly renounced all worldly things for the good of the nation. So, on one hand, you have this narrative of leaving family behind for the country. But the source contrasts that with reports of him attending these huge, high-profile weddings of celebrities, while at the same time quoting his own family members, including his niece, who reportedly were told to stay away and weren't even invited to his oath ceremony.
And this next quote, it's another absolutely central piece of that ascetic image. The claim is that he is a fakir, a holy man with basically no material possessions, who will one day just pick up his small bag and walk away.
But then, the source asks, does the lifestyle match the story? It points to things like sunglasses allegedly worth 140,000 rupees, a car worth 120 million, and reports of changing outfits 4 times in just 8 hours during state visits. It also brings up foreign travel back in the 1990s, a time when he claimed he was living on charity.
So you might be asking, if these core stories are being contested, how is this public image so powerful and so well maintained? Well, the analysis points to one big answer, a massive, and I mean massive, media and advertising effort.
Just look at this number, 64.91 billion rupees. According to the source, that's what the government spent on advertisements in just 8 years. To try and wrap your head around that, that's something like 7.1 million rupees every single day just on newspaper print ads. The scale of this spending is just immense. And what does all that spending get you? Well, it results in this: a constant, almost unavoidable media presence. The source says the Prime Minister's image appears everywhere: newspapers, TV, radio, petrol pumps, paid Google ads, even on COVID vaccine certificates, and at these special government-funded selfie points.
Now, the source then brings up a more recent event that it frames as a challenge to this carefully managed image. And that's a call for a public debate, head-to-head. A couple of former Supreme Court judges and a prominent journalist invited both Prime Minister Modi and opposition leader Rahul Gandhi to face each other directly.
So how did they respond? According to the source, the responses were different. Rahul Gandhi publicly accepted the offer. Prime Minister Modi, on the other hand, had remained silent on the whole thing at the time this analysis was put together. And all of this brings us to the source's final point, that despite this huge media machine, the carefully crafted persona might actually be facing some new challenges.
So what are these cracks that are supposedly starting to show? Well, the analysis points to a few things. Public questions being asked about why the violence in Manipur isn't being stopped. A record number of people, 225,000 of them, giving up their Indian citizenship in 2022. And what the source describes as the political need to recruit politicians from other parties who are previously accused of corruption. These are all presented as signs that maybe, just maybe, the so-called Modi magic is starting to fade.
And that really leaves us with our final thought. You know, this whole deep dive, based on one analysis of one leader, it actually raises a much bigger question for all of us, doesn't it? In this age of nonstop mass media and digital communication, how do these incredibly powerful, personality-driven stories shape politics, not just in India, but all around the world? What does it mean when the story of the leader becomes more important than the policies they actually put in place?